The music world moves fast. Want to stay up to date on the latest albums and get in-depth examinations with the artists? Check out Consequence of Sound, the podcast. Bite-sized album reviews for the music fan on the go who wants to stay in the know, and much more. Subscribe to the series on iTunes or your favorite podcast provider, and let the writers of Consequence of Sound steer you right. Check it out at consequenceofsound.net/COS podcast. Consequence Podcast Network.
Welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith With. It's an audio interview series presented by WFPK Independent Louisville at WFPK.org, Consequence of Sound, and the Consequence Podcast Network. Wherever you're listening from right now, hit that subscribe button so you can keep up with the series and all of these interviews. I'm Kyle Meredith. Today my guest is Naomi Hamilton of Jealous of the Birds. They just put out a brand new EP called The Moths of What I Want Will Eat Me in My Sleep, and we're going to figure out what that title is all about, as well as her excellent sense of wordplay and her poetry background. We'll get into the ins and outs of her writing about what it was like to be a teenager and how South by Southwest had a really big impact on some of the songs as well, and a collaboration from 2017 called Love is a Crow and what we can expect from the band in the very near future. It's Kyle Meredith with Jealous of the Birds.
Hi, it's Naomi from Jealous of the Birds.
How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm well. Good to talk to you.
Oh, same to you.
Let's start out with this new EP. The Moths of What I Want Will Eat Me in My Sleep, which is a whole lot of fun to say and as confusing as it is fun too. Should I ask about this? Is this worth asking about, that title?
Yeah, sure. Like, the title is pretty much like the last piece of the puzzle. It's taken from a poem that I wrote, the last line of a poem that I wrote after I graduated last year. So I just kind of lifted it from that, and it seemed to work. Like, especially since the EP is kind of like it's almost like a bite-sized version of the album. Mm-hmm. So we took all the best songs from that and put it in. So for me, it kind of summarizes what's been going on for the past 2 years with the whole Jealous of the Birds thing. So that title felt right for that. Yeah.
Now the way you've done that, as you just mentioned, taking some of the songs and re-recording them for the EP. Is that because of signing to Atlantic Records, like a reintroduction type of a deal?
Yeah, it's just because most of my music is more known back home, like in Belfast and Northern Ireland and UK and kind of stuff like that. So, yeah, signing with Atlantic was definitely one of those things where you're kind of going to be introduced to a whole different audience. But also just because when we released Parma Violets, the album, that was back in 2016, and I got a live band together and we just started playing the songs. So when you play live gigs, the vibe of the songs kind of change, and we wanted to kind of bring the elements that we brought to the table in the live shows to the actual live recordings. So it's just kind of touching up stuff that had kind of changed over the 2 years. Yeah.
I get a feeling like most artists would do that if they actually had the time and space.
Yeah.
It
was good. It was good because we just when we recorded Parma Violets, it was just me and my producer just kind of going for it. I didn't think we really knew that it was going to be anything. And now for the EP, we got the guys from the band in, and it was just like a different experience, but really good. So
now we're still, of course, over here in the States getting acquainted with you and everything. I mean, there was some great buzz on that debut record, but it is opening you up to a bigger audience. And as we learn about you, one thing I was surprised to read, and I wanted to see if this was true, that you really only been a songwriter for a few years. Is that right?
Yeah. I only started writing probably early 2015. And
wow.
The first show I ever played was in I think March 2015. And then the record Parma Violets came out the following year. So, but I've written poetry and stuff since I was 12 or 13, and I played guitar since then as well, but I just played other people's songs that I liked. Mm-hmm. I saw writing poetry and writing songs as two very distinct things, and then it was only when I started university that I just decided why not write my own songs. So yeah.
Yeah, how big of a jump has that been for you then? I mean, now that you've seen both sides, does it seem, is the area grayer in between? I
think so. I think because if I don't think I could be just a like a poet or a writer because I love music too much. So writing songs is just like the perfect little combination of the literary side of me, but also the side that's just like a really big music head and like really loves music. So I feel like I can try my best to write songs in a way that's like poems set to music, or strive to anyway. So.
And I mean, you've got such a unique gift of wordplay. You know, we hear that.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, right from the beginning that you kind of hear that. You know, and now knowing that you come from, you know, a poetry background, that completely makes sense. Was there a point where you found out you had a knack for this? Was there a turning point in your youth?
Probably just like from being back in school. Like I was really, I don't even think I could express how bad at maths I am, but I was always really good at English, like writing stories and like using my imagination in that way. So yeah, I think it was just something that I've always just been drawn to reading and writing and narratives and stories and like the psychology of people and their relationships and stuff. So I feel like that was just a gradual progression from then until now, yeah.
I hear some of that in these songs, and I think I've heard you talk about the broad strokes of it too, that, you know, there's instances on this EP, you talk about the sociology of how we see ourselves through other people's eyes. Is that the right way to say it?
I think so, yeah. I think because I'm really fascinated by the idea of like how other people's perceptions shape your own perceptions of yourself, or don't, just depending on, you know, the scenario. But yeah, just how we filter that and filter each other's egos and lives. Yeah, really fascinating to me. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the difference of how the person you would become if you were left alone to your own devices versus going out in the world and someone kind of projecting that onto you, and suddenly, I guess that's the reaction to that eventually becomes the person that, or is the person that you become.
I think about that a lot, like even just like what environments you're in. I studied like psychology in high school, so I'm like really interested in like nature versus nurture, like the people around you, the places you go, the experiences you have, and how that all just filters through. And I think that's even more magnified for me in terms of like being an artist or a creative person, and how that filters through into what you put back out in the world. Mm-hmm. I feel like a lot of people have like, artists are really conscious of not like mining the world for material for songs, like not turning, like cannibalizing their own lives to put into music. So I'm just kind of interested in how to get that balance.
Well, you're what now? Early 20s?
I'm 22.
22. Yeah. That was the other thing, is because seeing when these songs were written and recorded, you know, you'd have been right at the end of your teens right there. And I thought, you have an interesting awareness to being a teenager. And I had to think back, so I'm 36 now, but I was thinking back, like when I was a teenager, I was just completely blank and unaware of who I was at the time, like even dumb, and was only able to put it together, you know, years after in sort of hindsight. But you seem to have this awareness of the existence of that moment. And I think that's really unique for any writer.
Oh, thank you. Well, yeah, I think it's just something that I don't really think about. I just try to do it, or try to be at least kind of present and aware of what's going on. Yeah.
The only new song on here, Plastic Skeletons, which we're in love with around here, playing it a ton.
Oh, sweet.
Cool. This was written after your first trip to America?
Yeah, we went to South by Southwest in, I think it was 2016, and it was just like me doing a few solo shows around there, nothing too crazy. It was more just to kind of introduce me to that, because I'd never been to America and I'd never been to South by Southwest. No idea what to expect. So I kind of just kept a journal the whole time, because I was like, I'm going to capture every little moment that happens. And so when I got back, I kind of went through the journal and picked little images or memories that I had from it, and just wrote that song, yeah.
And now, how close was the actual experience to whatever you might have imagined? Because South by Southwest, by the way, is just the craziest musical environment any artist could be dropped into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like that was the point. Like, we went over there to be like, this is this is the wildest and weirdest and just like everything in one hub that you can experience. So like, just go experience that, and then you can have a little bit of context of like what you want to be around, if you get me. So yeah, I feel like Austin, the more, because I've been there twice, we went again to South by the next year with a full band, and I feel like it's one of those cities where I would love to go back when South by isn't on, so I can just kind of compare, because I know the whole city changes and like locals like deliberately go out of the city just to be chilling. But no, I really loved it. Like Austin's great.
Yeah.
And the more I come back here, I've done a couple trips to LA and a couple to New York, but there's so much in between. So like, yeah, I'd love to explore more of it. Yeah.
There's a lot of land. There's a whole lot of land.
Yep.
We talk about the writing a lot. I don't want to pass over the music because what you're doing is just as good on that side of things too. And
thank you.
Plastic Skeletons, there's several styles existing in such a short song. Like, what's the flip side of the story here? What's the musical creation of that song?
I think when I sat down with that one, I was like, I'm gonna make this really like bass line orientated. So I really wanted like a strong, like, because in the verses you've got that kind of punchy, funky bass. So I think that's where I started, and then just built it around that. It's got like a kind of psychedelic vibe to some of the guitar parts, but mostly just something that was really thrashy and loud is what I was going for.
Yeah, it's interesting because the parts are so different in some spaces, but they don't clash. Like, it works really well how it kind of blends together.
Oh, thank you.
And these songs, I mean, they're, like, as we're saying, the other songs are a couple years old now. And with this one, where do the new ones pick up? What's the album plan from here?
Ooh, well, we've got an EP that's going to be out in November, hopefully, and a new single in September. So I think stylistically it's more of because Parma Violets was very, like, the contrasts were very strong between songs. Like, you had more of a kind of heavier indie song versus, like, a very mellow song like Miss Misanthrope or Tonight I Feel Like Kafka. And now I feel like I'm writing stuff that feels really like blending of the two and not so like contrasted. Very organic, but still me. Yeah.
I can't wait to hear it. There was kind of one spare track that I wanted to ask about too, because last year Love as a Crow came out. What's the story with that one?
Oh yeah. That was a collaboration I did with a guy called Ryan Veal, who's this he's a great artist. He kind of does like electronica mixed with classical, like compositional stuff. He plays piano and mixes it with like EDM and electronic music. So he kind of just got in touch and was like, "Do you want to write a song?" And I was like, "Cool, let's do it." So he lives up in Derry in Northern Ireland, and I'm from Armagh. So we just kind of would like throw ideas back and forth through emails and like sending little memos to each other and then building on the song. And then I went up to his studio in Derry and just kind of mixed it there and like got it down. So yeah, it was really fun. I mostly just did the lyrics and some of the guitars and stuff like that. But no, he was really good to work with, and I dig the fact that I got to sneak in a little bit of spoken word into that song.
For some artists, it's kind of hard to co-write because you're giving up whatever vision and control. It sounds like that's not you though. Like this is more of a kind of a fun thing. Could you see yourself doing that more often?
Yeah, I feel like I haven't had a lot of experience in co-writing. I think it was really good and like refreshing to try it out with Ryan because our styles are so different. He does more like electronic music and I'm kind of more folk indie kind of stuff. So I think that like contrast, just how we were so different, kind of helped out because it just became this hybrid, weird song.
Yeah, it's a cool one. I mean, if there's a chance for you guys to do more of that in the future, I would definitely love to hear it. But
sweet.
Yeah, I know that, of course, gets in the way of everything else. And in the meantime, I'm becoming such a fan of Jealous of the Birds that I can't wait for another EP. That's awesome to hear that there's another one in the works already.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, Naomi, it was great talking to you. And once you get to Middle America, we'll see you around here.
Yeah, hopefully. Sweet. Thanks so much.
All right, take care.
Okay, take care. Bye.
Bye. Hey, thanks to Naomi Hamilton for the call today. Jealous of the Birds, the latest EP, The Moths of What I Want Will Eat Me in My Sleep. Don't forget you can subscribe to Consequence of Sound's YouTube channel right now to keep up with your favorite artists and interviews. And if you're a podcast fan listening on the podcast version, whether it's iTunes or Podchaser or wherever you're getting this from, hit that subscribe button, then give a rating, leave a review. Head over to WFPK.org after that. That's where I do a show every Monday through Thursday from noon to 3 Eastern, where you'll also find bonus episodes of this series. I'm Kyle Meredith. I'll see you next time.
Consequence Podcast Network.